Welcome to Analyze This, Views from Home and Abroad, a Nigerian history podcast, co-hosted by me, Adebola, and my co-host, Noche. This podcast is a unique initiative to explore Nigerian history from diverse local and global perspectives. So join us for this insightful analysis and engaging conversations that uncover the stories shaping our understanding of the past and present.
So welcome guys, welcome to the second episode of the podcast. Hope you enjoyed our first installment as much as we enjoyed making it. We got a lot of feedback on that episode and we're really happy that people listened and we're going to implement some of those changes. So welcome guys, welcome.
So we're back with the second episode. Yay! Another opportunity to explore the rich tapestry of Nigerian history. And we hope that all of you will be entertained, enlightened, and inspired by the knowledge we will share today. So today we're discussing a very sensational topic. Can you guess? Okay, don't worry, I'll help you. A slice of Nigerian history that continues to evolve in ways that break our hearts and make us proud simultaneously.
Sounds like just about everything from this country. Nigeria will break your heart and make your heart beat again in the same vein. You know, that's how this country is. Sometimes it's annoying. But yeah, welcome guys.
As Noche said, our hearts would ache. However, we have heart that is working, so we thank God for that. I think I alluded to this in our first episode when he spoke of the miracle that is your dedication, your dedicated patriotism to Nigeria, despite the countless times Nigeria has happened to you.
Yeah, that's true. Just in case you can't relate to what we're talking about, please, go back, listen to our first episode. We spoke about the Nigerian flag, so you can follow the gist about what we just said. So before we dive into the topic for today, we want to analyze a little bit of what's happening in Nigeria today. I think yesterday I was on Twitter like I normally am, and then I saw this discourse about the Flow app and the new Stardust app, and I wanted to hear your thoughts on it. Basically, on this podcast, every episode we want to talk about something that basically Nigerians are talking about that piques our fancy. And when I saw this, I was like, yeah, definitely, I want us to talk about this on the podcast. But as I have been told, I'm a man, so I shouldn't be the one leading a conversation like this. So the floor is yours.
Don't say that. If men are involved, we are unified as well with women.
Fair enough. So what do you think?
So basically, I did more research, and Flow apparently is a male-founded company, and Stardust is a female-founded company. But pertaining to the conversation going on Twitter by Nigerians, they were talking about how their data is being shared when they use Flow. So basically, Flow should not be used, and Stardust should be used as a better preference. But the thing is that it's quite funny because with the Roe versus Wade overturned in 2022, I'm just wondering why now Nigeria is facing this. But like I said, when America sneezes, the world catches cold. So for those who don't know what Flow and Stardust is, so those are like apps that women use to kind of track their health, their menstrual cycles, and ovulation.
Yeah. So the discourse from what I was understanding here was almost like two-pronged. One was a lot of people were upset with the apps because it was responsible for sharing a lot of their private information, which I think is completely valid. And then some people, not all people, but some people were concerned with the fact that there's now an app that's owned by women that they want to be a part of. And I think that there's nothing wrong with that as well. There were just some parallels that were being drawn almost like by some people, not everybody, but like, so the things that basically got me a bit confused was some parallels were basically being drawn between the fact that Flow was owned by a man and the fact that, the information was being sold. I think that that's wrong because as far as I'm concerned, 90% of companies sell the information that they have.
I think
So yeah, you think I'm listening?
I think when I was looking at the post that you shared with me, the Federal Trade Commission kind of scrutinized flow, so it's kind of out there with flow.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
I think that's why there was a scare, you know.
yeah. Which is all of that is valid. Like I said, people being concerned about their information is valid. People wanting to, or women wanting to be on an app that's owned by women is valid. My own was just for people who were trying to draw there were few though, but they were there that was almost trying to draw a parallel between the app being owned by men and the fact that, personal information was being, you know, sold basically. And
Mm,
I'm of the opinion that a lot of companies do that, whether they're owned by men, women, or anything in between. You understand our information is not really protected in this country and by a lot of apps. So, I mean, everybody should do what works for them. They should do you know, whatever you want to do, you should do. If women want to be on an app that's owned by women, they should do that. And if you don't want to be on an app that's owned by a man, you should do that. Everybody has, their prerogative to do what they do. The summary of the conversation. I don't think it should be an argument because I think that the 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 reasons that are being raised are valid. You get me?
No, absolutely. I agree with you. Data sharing and data privacy is very important. And I think it's better as a consumer to do your research and see what the best options are for you.
Fair enough. Fair enough. Okay, so let's dive into our main topic for today. Let's talk a bit about what happened in Nigeria before today. So we'll be analyzing the Nigerian FFFs.
Okay, so that's very misleading because I hope it's not FFFs I'm thinking about that we're talking today.
Very funny, but no, we're not talking about those, fair weather friends that we used to have back in school who stick to you like glue when you have food provisions and disappear as soon as your cabin biscuit has finished. Those are not the FFFs we're talking
Can you
about today.
imagine? Exactly. When you say FFFs, my mind goes to those friends who follow you to raid your mother's boots on visiting day.
Visiting day.
But forsake you the moment the slightest adversity in case punishment comes your way. Can you imagine?
I just had like great memory flashbacks of visiting days back in high school. It was wonderful.
Meaning it was bad or wonderful
No,
meaning
no,
that
no,
it
like
was.
wonderful, like those fun times, man. I didn't really have problems in my life that time. Life was good. Life was easier. But
I'm glad you enjoyed it while it lasted.
exactly.
Anyway, to FFMs, let's be real for a minute. We talk about FFFs being other people, but let's confess, have you ever been an FFF?
I mean, once or twice. Who hasn't?
No, that's true. Who hasn't? We all
Yeah,
need leverage, right?
yeah.
Mhm.
Fair enough. Fair enough.
So, our research assistant and scriptwriter Osa sent in her confessions about her own FFF experience. According to Osas, in secondary school, she didn't offer food and nutrition as a vocational subject, but chose agric instead. So whenever food and nutrition students were having practicals, she was loyal to her so-called friends who offered the subject. She would even go as far as helping them organize their utensils for practicals and hype them whenever they walk past in their ridiculous uniforms. But as soon as she was done eating practical food, they went back to being, how far classmates,
Yeah. Anyway, today we will not be talking about friends for food. That's not the FFFs we are talking about. But we're talking about the real FFFs, which stand for fast food franchises, which are also called quick service restaurants.
Mhm. Yeah, it's just like Noche was saying. So it's a cool abbreviation either way. But we're talking about food after all.
Yeah, but these are the FFFs that are after your money and you are after their food, which basically makes it a mutually beneficial relationship, unlike the FFF we used to do in high school. Yeah.
Exactly. So when we say Nigerian fast food franchises, what exactly are we talking about?
So I'd like you to think of like Domino's, KFC, Sweet Sensations, Chicken Republic, and the grand patron of them all, the biggest boy in his prime, Mr. Biggs. in his
Okay, so
in his prime, he was unrivaled. Nobody could touch Mr. Biggs.
okay, so side note, caveat. Many people forget that Chicken George was arguably one of the first fast food restaurants starting in Nigeria in 1981 before Mr. Biggs in 1986. Limited information is available, but it's possible our parents and grandparents may remember this. One branch was located in Adams Street in
Hmm.
Oworonshoki. That's in Lagos. So,
Yes.
well, is Mr. Biggs really the grand patron of the Nigerian FFF
I
factor?
mean,
Let's see.
you only remember the person that did the best, if I'm being right.
That's
But
true. That's true. That lasted
uh,
for a while.
exactly. So I guess when you analyze it, which is basically what we're here to do, Mr. Biggs may not count as the grand patron, but is definitely a founding father. So you know
Mm-hmm.
how in like our Abrahamic religions, we have we can trace our origins back to like Abraham, then his son Isaac, and then his son Jacob after that. And these are like the founding fathers. So let's just say that Mr. Biggs was Jacob in the Nigerian fast food franchise sector. So while technically not the grand patron like Abraham, but it was definitely a cornerstone of what exists today.
That makes sense. But if Mr. Biggs is Jacob, where are Abraham and Isaac?
Fair enough. Fair enough.
Going biblical
Uh,
here.
great question. Great question. So let's dive into our episode proper now. So first of all, let's look at what a fast food franchise is in the first place. A franchise model in general is described as working for yourself, but not by yourself. The concept is a simple one. So a successful business or a successful brand chooses to expand rapidly by replicating itself in local businesses. So in fast food franchising, your business will essentially be riding on the identity of an established food chain. So there are two parties involved, the franchisor and the franchisee. So the
Interesting.
franchisor is the successful fast food chain, and the franchisee is the local business that becomes a retailer brand, basically. That this successful, they bear the name of the successful chain and operate as a branch rather than, running their own single business and trying to make it huge in the food industry. So now, of course, there's a lot of more economics working together to make it happen. But basically, the way fast food franchises work is that the franchisee pays a fee to purchase the franchisor's existing business, intellectual property, and rights, which this include like trademarks, logos, goodwills, proprietary knowledge under a franchise agreement. Well, running a fast food franchise is a fast way to make your dream of running a restaurant without having to basically do advertisement. Um, all you need is your required minimum in liquid assets to stock and run your business, and then from there you are paying a monthly fee to the franchise chain. So basically, you want to run a restaurant, you don't want to go through the hassle of building your own brand from scratch. All you can do is get into an agreement with an existing franchise. You have the equipment that they need, or rather that you need to run your own business. You pay them a certain amount, you get their name, their logos, their proprietary knowledge, and then you basically run it yourself and then pay them a fee every month. That's basically what um the fast food franchise business is all about.
So, Nochi has done a great job explaining this to us, and so it's nice, and this makes sense, right? So, fast food franchises have been a very popular trend around the world since 1921, with the founding of White Castle restaurants, the first world acclaimed fast food and burger restaurants in the US. The industry has grown and exploded beyond the US with famous FFFs like Burger King, McDonald's, KFC, and several others. So FFFs are practically on every street corner, right? Providing the greasy juices to fuel our capitalism-induced consumer culture. And also Nigeria has not been left out.
Yeah. So of course, when it comes to food and in everything, um, well, is it everything? But for the purpose of this podcast, I'll say everything. Nigeria know they carry last. Our insatiable need for food is responsible for the birth of the ever lucrative business of food. So the business of food has taken a journey of its own from trade by barter systems in prehistoric time to the orders we make via websites and mobile apps today. The turn of nearly every decade has ushered in some form of a revolutionary change in the food and beverage industry that has taken us one step closer to convenience and consumerism and two steps further away from the traditional way of doing things. And one of such revolutionary changes in the food sector is the introduction of fast food franchises, which are constantly raising the bar of how food should be sold and consumed in Nigeria today.
Exactly. The evolution in the FFF sector are always so rapid and creative. As we mentioned earlier, similar to many things in Nigeria, things change. These changes hold the power to break your heart and or make you so impressed and proud to be a Nigerian. One of the things that makes us proud is the growth of this sector from its introduction in the 1960s till today, especially when you consider the diverse challenges these businesses have to face.
Yeah. So you're right. So how did fast food franchises become a thing in Nigeria?
That's a good question. So that's the history we are here for. Are you ready?
Yeah,
Drum
yeah,
roll.
yes. Drum roll, please.
So the history of the Nigerian FFF sector dates back to the colonial era, when the United African Company, UAC, a British multinational corporation, introduced into British West Africa a taste of British lifestyle, British life, to give the colonists a little home away from home feeling. So UAC is essentially a conglomerate of Unilever-owned businesses. It was established as a subsidiary to Unilever, originally devoted to West African trade within the Commonwealth countries of Ghana, Nigeria, Sierra Leone, and the Gambia. It was formed in 1929 following the merger of the African and Eastern Trade Corporation and the Niger Company, which had been acquired by Lever Brothers in 1920. Now, the history of the UAC and the Niger Company dates as far back as 1879, when George Turban, Goldie, an agent of British imperialism, sought to maximize the exploitation of Africa's resources by amalgamating commercial firms operating within and around the Niger area.
So yeah, there's a lot of history to unpack there, which I am itching to unpack because when I hear companies like UAC and the Royal Niger Company, I don't even want to talk about them in very glaring, or happy tones because of the kind of things they did in this continent. But for the purpose of this podcast, we will not focus on that discussion today. We'll table that for later episodes when we talk about the other things. But for the purpose of this podcast, we're not doing that today.
So, exactly. However, it is important to lay the foundation, right? As Nachi said. As I had said earlier, UAC is essentially a conglomerate of several businesses, an umbrella for several other enterprises traded in palm oil, timber, gold, and other consumables to meet the needs of Europe's industrial revolution and or the growing number of Europeans in Africa. So one of these several business enterprises designed to meet the growing demand of the expatriate population was the Kingsway chain of stores. Do you remember that, anyone?
Kingsway, the place where our parents' generation made some of their fondest memories. Most of the people in our generation will have no idea what Kingsway is, but basically that's why we're here.
Yeah, definitely. So for most of them, it was their first introduction to the vanities of Western life. Aren't we still doing that today? Questionable. The Kingsway store was established in 1915, first in Accra, Ghana, by the Miller brothers, a retail trading company that emerged to serve the needs of British colonists through the sale of homewares, clothing, and food imports from Britain. Millers named this new store Kingsway in reference to their new headquarters at West Africa House on London's Kingsway. Eventually, at the dawn of Africa, at the dawn of the Africa's independence era, Kingsway expanded its offerings to include attractions of growing African bourgeoisie consumers too. It offered cultural artifacts and of Europeanness to colonizers and the improving interventions into indigenous patterns of domesticity undertaken by colonial regime. So basically, what happened is that Kingsway adopted to the needs of the colonizers and also the
Yeah.
growing modernization or
Of Africa.
Europeanness of the locals. So that's what it
Okay.
did.
Okay.
So Kingsway was responding to a demand for modernist luxury goods and experiences in Ghana and Nigeria by colonizers as such as it was creating one among the Africans.
Yeah, so a fun fact is that Kingsway didn't actually start out as an enterprise of the UAC conglomerate, but was independently operated by its founders, the Miller brothers. However, sticking to the franchise culture, after a series of acquisitions and mergers, Millers were absorbed into UAC in the later 1940s, and the Kingsway Accra store became the largest and most prominent in the UAC's network of over 12,000 retail outlets across West Africa.
Yeah, exactly. So very true. Kingsway really became the king, didn't it? So between
Yeah.
1920 and 1930, Kingsway customer base expanded when the population of European women in British West Africa tripled. The presence of European women accentuated the refinements of privilege and the etiquettes of racial differences. So women put new demands on the white communities to tighten their ranks, clarify their boundaries, and mark out their social space in Anglophone West Africa. So basically, the wives of colonial officers were pressuring their husbands to make their lives, in Africa more comfortable, like the European counterpart. So this way, that's where Kingsway came in.
You know, even though this is not an example I'd love to use, but look at the things that men are doing for love. Men are lovers.
You have to now, but I know, right? I know, right? Colonial wives increasingly relied on Kingsway stores to get their orders delivered directly to bungalows, according to the Kingsway slogan. Unfortunately, with the dawn of independence came threats to the store's operations, especially as nationalist Africans became vocal and aggressively condemned the inflow of goods imported by Kingsway, which was a smokescreen of the outflow of raw materials that the UAC
Exactly.
extracted from West Africa. So can you imagine? Can you imagine?
Exactly. It's just a smoke screen.
Yeah. So with the independence knocking, most British civil servants left the continent and those who remained were forced to make significant adjustments to their spending habits due to significant pay cuts. As a result, the women who had pressured their husbands to acquire luxury furniture, appliances, and all the fancy houseware that was advertised in Kingsway exhibitions had to limit their appetite to basic daily necessities rather than the consumer durables.
But it goes to show how the economy will shame anybody. You can be a baller 1 minute, open bottles, and the next minute, with the change of policy, the slightest change in policy will turn you into a debtor, somebody that is owing in the mama put in your area. Basically, that's what the economy can do to someone.
Honestly, you're very, very right. So, funny but true, never undermine the influence of government policies over your pockets and pots. I mean, 9.5 years of APC rule has taught Nigerians some major lessons on this.
God.
Not you want to say anything?
I don't want to. If I start talking now about what APC's rule has done to me as a person in this country, we'll not be able to finish this podcast. So let us.
I know some people will say, "Shana, you."
Oh my God.
You.
Let's move on. Let us move on. So honestly, in 2025, we're seeing the same thing happening now in America, where there's a new president in charge, and there's a new policies are being effected, and it's having ripple effects not only in America, down all the way to Africa. I know people who have lost their jobs as a result of somebody in the US cutting funding, or a new policy that cuts certain type of funding, and then all the way here, people are losing their jobs. That's the way it can have um, an effect. So, coming back to our focus for today, Kingsway management was not about to let themselves become victims of the independence transition. And so, like the leaders that they were, they saw into the future and began pivoting before it was too late. The board noted that it had to adapt to a new pattern of consumption in the region if it was to survive. Basically, they couldn't keep up the model that was, acceptable in the West. That's what they had brought, and they realized that that model was dying out. So they needed to adapt to the environment that they were in.
Okay. So Kingsway, as a part of their durability strategy, altered their products to include more consumer goods, so local goods preferences. So inside the store included a food hall, cosmetics departments on the ground floor, while homeware, clothes, sporting, and electrical goods were sold in the upper floors, alongside restaurants, a beauty salon, and an international post office. Can you believe the whole package?
Mm.
But by 1973, an area like the food hall, which hosted a coffee shop and snack stands, was converted and rebranded as Kingsway Rendezvous. Kingsway Rendezvous. It said the menu was expanded and made more inclusive to the African palate to include sandwiches, pastries, and the coarse local dishes like, jollof rice. Of course, jollof rice. So Kingsway pioneered the genius concept of combining international and local to create an ambience and an array of products that appealed to Nigerians in like never before. So now this change was very significant because not only did it serve to keep Kingsway afloat for decades to come amidst turbulent economic waters, but the rebranding of Kingsway Rendezvous also marked the birth of African fast food franchise. Ding, ding, ding. So now, because our podcast is focused solely on Nigerian history, we will only be analyzing the ripple effect of this change within our beautiful country, Nigeria. By 1982, Kingsway had department stores in 30 major cities like Lagos, Port Harcourt, Jos, Kaduna, Ibadan, and others, with over 1,000 employees. The store in Ibadan was a 3-story store, a major achievement back then. So imagine identical Kingsway Rendezvous offering the same menu, ambience, aesthetics, and quality of service across 13 states. Can you imagine at that time? So yeah, that was the beginning of fast food franchise. FFF.
So basically, we had spoken about Mr. Biggs being Jacob. Uh, Now we're introducing ourselves to who Abraham of the fast food sector was, basically, as you mentioned earlier. And that was Kingsway Rendezvous, Kingsway and Kingsway Rendezvous.
So we have actually met Abraham and Isaac. Abraham being Kingsway stores themselves, which create the option of food spaces in department stores. Then Isaac is Kingsway Rendezvous. So, however, being neither Abraham nor Isaac got to see the many nations they were promised, Kingsway Rendezvous continued to operate for a few years as a department Kingsway stores and nothing more. Towards the end of the 1980s, however, price and currency regulations and the downturn of the economy forced the closure of many stores and eventually Kingsway stores as well.
Which proves our point again in the power of policy. And that's why whenever we are voting or doing anything in this country, we need to be thinking about policy, not the things that we normally think about in this country. Just policy. Anyway, please move.
Exactly, just like Nochi is alluding to or said. So the gold mine had been discovered and the UAC was not about to let it go unexploited, considering their major work back then was the exploitation of African Africans.
Exactly. They were here to take. So they were not going to stop.
Exactly. So by 1986, UAC, under whose nest Kingsway rested, rebranded Kingsway Rendezvous to Mr. Biggs.
Mm.
Oh, is it Mr. Biggs? I've heard Mr.
No,
Biggs. Mr.
just
Biggs.
Mr. Biggs, please, Mr. Biggs. Yeah.
Mr. Biggs. Okay. The one to bear the sons as many as the sand on the seashore. Mr. Biggs was designed to operate as a full-fledged fast food chain as opposed to departments within a store. So this was an independent venture within the franchise. A history gold nugget about Mr. Biggs is that beyond just being a grand patron of the FFF factor, it was one of the first Nigerian companies to sell franchises to investors. They are one of the pioneers of franchising model in Nigeria.
Yeah, yeah. So Mr. Big was doing a lot back then and didn't get a lot of the accolades that he deserved. So that's why we are here on this podcast, giving the management of Mr. Biggs and UAC their flowers for their landmark achievements in Nigeria. My tummy, I don't know, I can speak for myself and my family. Our tummies and our taste buds are grateful for your decades of service. Mr.
Not
Biggs
alone,
is,
I'm part of them
yeah,
too.
yeah, it was a major part of my childhood.
So Mr. Biggs was originally a family-friendly restaurant in Nigeria. Can you remember?
I I love
With the Scotch egg and the donuts, with
exactly.
accommodations for the whole family. The restaurants could be easily identified in any state by their unique brand colors, which were red and yellow. Each outlet was designated to be spacious and comfortable, with ample seating for large crowds. Children were given premium attention because high chairs and booster seats were readily available, making it easy for parents to bring their young children. Most Mr. Biggs outlets had play areas to accompany children while their parents waited in line to order food. One of the honors we can add to Mr. Biggs' profile of accolades is their role in mainstreaming comic book culture in Nigeria, if you can remember. So Mr. Biggs was a special place for children or kids, especially the boys, because of the inspiring, iconic Super Striker comics.
Shakes Okoro.
Which
I
told the story
remember.
of young Shegs Okoro and his intriguing life on and off the football pitch. So Mr. Biggs was one of the sponsors of Super Strikers in Nigeria. So customers could buy the comics at the restaurant and get the comics along with some meals, depending on the package.
Yeah, it's interesting to see how much of the Nigerian culture influenced Mr. Biggs, e.g., their menus, and how much they also influenced Nigerian culture. Part of the symbolic mutually beneficial relationship we highlighted earlier. Mr. Biggs had a mutually beneficial relationship in Nigeria. They influenced in Nigerian culture, and their menu was also influenced by Nigerian culture.
Mm. So the irony, but when we talk about of meals, Mr. Biggs was famous for its signature meat pies.
Yeah.
Can you imagine?
I
Which
saw a
was
tweet. I saw a tweet
okay.
recently where somebody was saying how nobody is still going to release the recipe for that meat pie even years after
Oh
everything
wow.
has almost shut down. That meat pie was legendary. It was legendary.
Okay. He says so the meat pies, which was inherited from its predecessor Kingsway. They also offered various menu items, especially designed to appeal to children. These included small portions of popular dishes like fried chicken and jollof rice, and kid-friendly options like chicken nuggets, smiley fries, and fish fingers. Mr. Biggs also offered a selection of delicious desserts such as ice cream sundaes, milkshakes, which were a big hit with the kids. Oh my God, I'm hungry. Mr. Biggs also employed friendly staff trained to interact with children and make them feel welcome. The chain even offered special birthday party packages, including decorated tables, party favors, and a visit from the Mr. Biggs mascot, who can remember the first of its kind in Nigeria.
Yeah, yeah.
So the combination of welcoming atmosphere, friendly staff, and the menu that catered to all ages made Mr. Biggs a favorite among Nigerian families. Mr. Big's mission was summarized by Mr. Obi Adindu, a communication specialist for the brand, in a newspaper interview with PM News in 2003, is to provide Nigerians with qualitative nutrition that will be delivered at maximum speed, minimum cost, and in an environment that is comfortable and hygienic. Okay,
Mm.
well said.
Yeah, and I would say they achieved their goal basically. So after Mr. Big sold franchises to investors, the chain saw rapid expansion in record time. By the late 1990s, they had established a network of restaurants across major cities, offering a familiar and consistent dining experience to a wide customer base attracted by affordable Western-styled fast food with a local touch. Not all franchises.
Another innovative strategy by Mr. Biggs and UAC that fueled expansion in the early 2000s was striking a partnership with Mobil Oil Nigeria PLC. It was a genius idea by both businesses to maximize profits and get ahead of the competition by getting their customers to fuel their tanks and stomachs. By providing quick service in high traffic areas without the customers having to go out of their way to benefit from Mr. Big's tasty delight. Once again, Mr. Big's is to be thanked for the numerous FFFs serving Nigerians in various filling stations spread across the country. Today, we even have filling stations owning fast food restaurants to take advantage of the traffic they are getting. So Mr. Big's spectacular franchising strategy turned out to be their secret weapon. So as we have seen up to this point, as well as the weapon fashioned against them, as we will see things unfold from the mid-2000s, as per the standard franchise model, UAC granted licenses to independent operators to open and manage Mr. Big's restaurants, which initially fueled growth until it sowed seeds of decline.
Okay, so how so? That's interesting to hear. So how did that happen?
So, good question. So, the first seed of decline sowed by the model was the quality control problem. Because these licenses weren't sold to the 12 sons of Jacob alone, but every Tom, Dick, and Harry who could afford the fees and check the relevant boxes, there was no 100% guarantee that all franchises would uphold the same vision and standard Mr. Biggs, Jacob, had when he started this. So some franchises prioritize profit over maintaining the brand standards. As a result, things like inconsistent food preparation, varying levels of customer service, and lack of adherence to company policies became recurrent and gradually tarnished Mr. Big's brand image.
Oh, I see, I see. So the meat in the meat pies in certain outlets were strangely replaced with potatoes and onions.
Isn't
Oh
it
my
true?
God. Yeah, it's true. Absolutely. So there were cases of stale food becoming more common, or the popular problem of half egg in moi moi, which now that I'm thinking about it, is now a staple. It's now half egg in moi moi. So apparently it used to be full egg in moi moi before.
Or gala
Now,
that is not gala anymore.
exactly. Everybody now is half egg in moi moi. That is the standard now. So there was poor customer service and other quality issues. It became more rampant. But this wasn't the only problem that the big B, Mr. Biggs, had to contend with in those years, right?
You said Big B. So
Yeah.
as if this wasn't sad enough. So Mr. Big's great expansion era coincided with an epoch of economic, social, political instabilities enough to shake the foundations of any business, especially one as spread thin as this UAC franchise. So according to an article by African fintech giant RiseVest, these factors put a strain on Mr. Big's supply chain and profitability. The cost of imported ingredients, essential for maintaining the chain's Western style menu, became increasingly unpredictable. So this forced UAC to make difficult choices such as reducing portion sizes, substituting ingredients, or raising prices. These measures, while intended to protect the company's bottom line, further eroded the value proposition that had made Mr. Biggs so popular in the first place.
So Mr. Biggs got a very bad rep for giving their customers small food in exchange for big money in an economy that was now tough for these average customers. So that was
Mm,
a problem.
that's very true. So let me just give a perspective on quality control, especially portion control. So portion control is critical to minimize food waste, lowering cost, ensuring consistent customer experience, and maintaining quality. But by implementing effective portion control, restaurants can enhance profitability and operational efficiency. So basically, establishing a standard portion size, training staff as needed, regular audits to help ensure compliance, and also updating checklists to keep staff informed, analyzing the data where need be so that you can improve planning and inventory management and ultimately boost profitability. But the main thing is food quality and preparation through controlled portions can set a restaurant apart from its competitors. And it's very important to understand the audience, right? So quality control and portion control are important in fast food restaurants for customer satisfaction, cost effectiveness, and food quality. Also, presentation is important. Environment is important.
Yeah, yeah,
Real-time monitoring is important, right? Food
yeah,
preparation, the safety of it. So if customers are not satisfied and there's food waste, cost is high, there's no inventory, what happens to the profit margin, right?
very true.
One can just guess what that is. So it's really important for there to be consistency across the board while putting account economics.
Okay. Fair enough. Fair enough.
So Mr. Big's decline in quality gave even their most loyal customers a valid reason to explore the pool of options emerging rapidly around them.
Exactly. And that's where competition is key. Competition arose, basically.
It reminds me of the some competition like that. Yeah, is it that video? Okay, move forward. Don't worry, I'm not going to
Yes.
sing.
Yeah,
Okay,
is the you should sing now. Sing on the podcast now.
no,
Let
I
them hear.
won't sing now. Don't worry, I'm not singing anymore.
Okay. Okay.
This
Go on.
competition was a thorn in the FFF's flesh. So Mr. Big's success had inspired a few others who took the bold step to venture into sector. So other Nigerian owned chains like Tantalizer, Sweet Sensation, Chicken Republic emerged, filling the gaps Mr. Biggs created. So with their special offerings that attracted customers to them, for instance, according to Rice Vest article quoted earlier, since these newcomers were unburdened by the legacy of their large corporate structure, they were more agile and responsive to changing consumer preferences. So an example was the growing demand of healthier food portions and local flavors, which they capitalized on, while Mr. Biggs retained primarily food of traditional Western style menu.
Yeah. So
Headed to the
Mr.
milk
Biggs
girls.
yeah, so Mr. Big started off by embracing innovation, but eventually became too stuck in their own innovation, unwilling to embrace change. And that is a message to everybody. In whatever facet of life you find yourself, you need to embrace change because things change all the time and the world is moving forward. And if you don't embrace change and move with the tides, you will get left behind. And that's what happened to Mr. Big. So because in response to the competition, they still felt the solution was to double down on their expansion. And they kept on opening even more outlets to maintain their market share. However, this strategy proved unsustainable and only stretched their resources, capacity, and standards thinner. And as they say, no be who now who first buy motor buy old model. So eventually, Mr.
The
Biggs
irony.
became exactly. If you buy car first, you go your own will be old compared to other people's own. So eventually, Mr. Biggs became the old model no one wanted to associate with. Mr. Big lost his position as the undisputed champion of the Nigerian fast food market and
Hmm.
no longer the go-to destination for families seeking a quick and affordable meal. The brand had become by word of by the brand had become a byword for inconsistency, poor quality, and lack of innovation. As a guy back, in the later years of Mr. Biggs, if
Mm-hmm.
you wanted to impress a girl, you certainly could not take her there on a date. You would have been
Interesting.
blocked.
See the change. Can you
So
imagine many years back, that would have been
exactly,
the
it was
ideal
the
place?
go-to place. It would
I'm
have been the
telling you.
ideal destination. But towards the end, you couldn't
Mm.
do that. You get blocked.
You get blocked. I said so.
Exactly.
So not only will you get blocked, your dignity, your good intentions, below minimum wage bank account Can you imagine? We'll be dragged in the mud and the girl, in the
Exactly.
girl chats.
Exactly. And that would have been wild and traumatizing on many levels, to be fair. So anyway, all of this won't still hold a candle to the weight Mr. Big's management staff and USC had to carry as they finally closed the doors to most of their outlets.
So how sad. However, in 2018, a glimmer of hope emerged when UAC Restaurants, the UAC of Africa PLC division responsible for Mr. Biggs, was acquired by a consortium of investors led by Capitals Assets Limited. So the new ownership group ignited optimism for the brand revitalization, unveiling plans to invest in refurbishing existing outlets, enhancing service standards, and introducing exciting new menu items, while initial efforts were made, such as launching budget-friendly meal options and revamping select outlets with a more modern aesthetic. These changes have yet to be widespread enough to significantly alter the brand's overall image or reverse its decline. So it's interesting to know that not everybody, right? Not everybody has given up on Mr. Biggs. Have you given up on Mr. Biggs? Noche, have you given
Since
up?
me, I've given up, please. I did my best. I've, I don't give
You
up.
give the rest.
Exactly. I've left it.
Although the remnants hopeful need to do a lot more to restore the glory days of the fast food giants, such as digging deeper into their pockets to expand their investments in order to enable Mr. Biggs compete effectively with the ever evolving competitive landscape.
Uh, and as you said, the competition is really intense and challenging, and it's enough to scare anyone who wants to venture into it. There are new local and international fast food chains that are taking over the market despite recent economic downturn. So any comeback from Mr. Biggs has to be massive and revolutionary on every front. But we believe in you guys. We are watching. We'll see how things unfold. We hope
Hmm.
this will spark something in you so that you can fight back. Fight back.
Okay, so
Exactly.
definitely looking forward to Mr. Biggs 2.0. Drum roll. So UAC Restaurants and the Biggs team, this episode is dedicated to your resilience, and we trust that you won't let us down. Okay, but Mr. Biggs isn't the only Nigerian FFF worth talking about. There are several others. We have been talking about competition since, right? So who are the competition?
Yeah. So like you said, there's a lot of them, and we can talk about all of them. But we'll be looking at a couple of them. So we're going to talk about Tantalizer, Sweet Sensation, and Chicken Republic. Because along with Mr. Biggs and others, these fast food franchises have served to contribute significantly to the Nigerian economy through numerous benefits like job provision, especially for the youth. And according to the president of the Association of Fast Food and Confectionaries in Nigeria, fast foods contribute up to 200 billion naira in the growth of the economy annually. And that all its members pay up to 1 billion naira in taxes and levies. Wow,
Hmm, that's
that's
huge, right?
huge. It's huge.
It's huge.
It's huge.
Huge. Add other, okay, it's huge. So add other options on the revenue potential of FFFs and notable benefits to the Nigerian economy, Nigerians. So what's the analysis about these brands?
So there's plenty actually. Now you see, in the 1980s, right, the 1980s ushered a shift in Nigeria, which inspired the growth of the Nigerian fast food franchise sector. For instance, technological advancements, which were byproducts of globalization, made it easier to adopt business innovation. So with globalization, business innovations that were successful in other places, you could adopt it in your own country. And Nigeria's return to democratic rule encouraged many Nigerians in the diaspora who had owned or worked in fast food franchises in Europe and in the US to return home with their acquired knowledge of the quick service and restaurant business. In 1994, Sweet Sensation, for instance, opened its first outlet using a similar themed fast food restaurant concept that was rival to Mr. Biggs. The franchise, founded by Kehinde Kamsin, began from a tiny guardhouse in Ilupeju, Lagos, and after about 10 years operating out of her family's garage, its first outlet was opened in 1994. The business has grown to become one of the most successful fast food franchises in Nigeria, with over 25 outlets across the country, over 2,000 employees, and over 60 arrays of meals that are served daily. The sweet sensation gave and has continued to give Mr. Biggs and other fast food franchises a run for their money.
Hmm. So yeah, but sweet sensation wasn't the only sensation hitting Nigeria's taste buds in the 90s. 1996, Tasty Fried Chicken opened its first restaurant, which was a replica of the US-based FFF, Kentucky Fried Chicken, which is KFC, famous for its chicken theme. So KFC and TFC, you get it. So the
Yeah,
TFC franchise was birthed by Olayinka and Pamela Adedayo as an extension of Tasty Pot, an outdoor catering company she had started, which served Nigerian and continental food at special events. So the catering company still exists as Tasty Fried Chicken's catering operation, but in 1997, Mrs. Adedayo incorporated the Tasty Fried Chicken and opened her first location in Surulere, Lagos State. Now, remember what we had said earlier about the 90s ushering the return of Nigerians from the diaspora who had prior experience working in FFF abroad. So Mrs. Adebayo was one of these returnees who had worked as a KFC manager in the US. This made it easy for her to establish TFC using the KFC business model. So TFC has grown vastly beyond the Surulere origins. It has grown to 14 restaurants across the country, majorly in southern Nigeria.
yeah. Now, although TFC was built based on the KFC model, they were smart enough to copy a page from Mr. Big's playbook.
So yeah, so that could only have intensified the competition for Mr. Biggs, I guess.
Exactly, considering how strategic this move was. So remember that Mr. Biggs and Mobil Oil had a partnership.
Yeah. So the refueling your tank and your stomach game changer.
Yeah, exactly. So a game changer indeed. Well, in 2006, TFC, that's Tasty Fried Chicken, launched a partnership with Owando PLC to open TFC inside Owando service station. Another fruitful partnership that enabled Nigerians enjoy full tanks and full bellies as well.
So these are the things that make us proud, of Nigerian businesses. To be really serious, to keep innovating and adapting to the changes in the market, right? So that's what we're talking about, while consistently adding value to the economy. So in 2020, for instance, the fast food industry in Lagos alone was projected to be worth over 7 trillion naira, even in the midst of a global epidemic.
Okay. Anyway, all of this is truly remarkable. So Tantalizers was another major fast food franchise which came into the space in 1997 by a husband and wife duo. Mofo serving as vice chairman and Abosede as the managing director and CEO. Its first outlet was opened in Festac Town, Lagos. Tantalizers was initially a small neighborhood restaurant serving hamburgers. Eventually, the business blew up and Tantalizers expanded beyond Festac Town to other spaces in Lagos, Ibadan, Abuja, and Port Harcourt. Tantalizers has over 50 restaurants across Nigeria, offering both local and continental staples such as meat pies, scotch eggs, chicken, jollof rice, fried rice, cakes, and hamburgers.
Hmm. Delicious. Am I not hungry? Are you not hungry?
It's almost midnight. I can't be eating by this time.
Oh, just teasing. Okay, so nice one. The final FFF we'll be analyzing today is the Chicken Republic, right? So 2024 made it 20 years since another Nigerian, Deji Akinyoju, returned from the diaspora to start a fast food franchise that introduced Nigerians to tasty possibilities of chicken, especially fried chicken. So you can see the competition there.
Yeah.
The first the first Chicken Republic was established in Apapa, Lagos, and is presently trading in over 190 locations across Nigeria and Ghana. Wow. Chicken Republic prides itself on its West African spice dishes and constant innovation that enables them to stay ahead in very competitive markets.
So Nigerian fast food franchises are taking real advantage of digital innovation, developing mobile apps like you have Glovo, Chowdeck, Gokada, Jumia Food, and others to make the product more affordable, readily accessible, price friendly to their customers, especially in the growing middle class. Gen Zs and millennials who have a general inclination to eat out rather than cook at home.
Is this true?
Yeah. Please, it is a lot more. It's just the money that comes with eating out, but a lot more people in our generation. And I'm a millennial, by the way, but very close to Gen Z. Um, a lot more people in our generations are more inclined to, if they can afford it, to eat out instead of being in the kitchen and cooking every single day.
Okay. So yeah, so that's actually true because there's a brief period last year when it was cheaper for a single person living alone to eat out than cook their own meals because of how expensive food prices were. Also, COVID-19 increased the demand for food orders, which has forced FFFs to pay as much attention to their online and digital presence as they do the physical space. So it's just a multifactorial issue going on here. So
Yeah.
while in the 90s and early 2000s, the ambience of restaurants was the only concern when it came to design and aesthetics. Today, a lot more thought goes into design of websites, social media, apps, etc. So, which is good because it increases the competition and pushes the brands to deliver excellence.
Yeah. So we are proud of the excellence being delivered so far, but there's always room for improvement. We are rooting for the success of the fast food franchise sector in Nigeria, and we will, like always, be here to tell the story.
Great. So, essentially, when Mr. Biggs makes a mega comeback, whenever that may be,
We still believe in it.
still believing in it.
Okay, good to know.
Well, well, that will be all for us for now. So we hope this episode has given you some more insight into Nigerian history. We would love to hear your feedback and inputs because, like the FFFs, we too are doing all we can.
So thank you guys for listening to our episode. Please listen, like on different platforms, share it to as many people as you can. Follow and subscribe, so that we can have more interactions with you people. Listen to what you have to say. Take our polls basically. We want to hear from you. We want to hear areas where we can improve and get our episodes better, basically. And with that, this is Analyze This News from Home and Abroad. And I am Nochi, and you are
Adibola, and see you on the next episode.
See you on the next episode. And shout out to Osas, our great script writer who does amazing work. Shout out to you. Bye, guys.
Bye.